Okay, so now we need to get the user when they submit a new property because we need to include them as the owner. So to get the user, we need to get the session, but we need to get it in this file, in this route.js. So what I'm going to do is create a separate file. Actually, you know what? Let's put it here first, and then we'll change it up, and I'll show you how we can move it to a new file because we will need to do this in many other routes to get the user. So we'll have a separate utility file that will get the user from the session. So first thing we're going to do is import the, let's say, get. So it's not get session, it's a get server session. So it's a bit different, and it works a bit different than it does with get session or use session in the front end. And that's going to be from next auth/next. Okay, and then remember I told you we put this the provider stuff in this auth options file. We put it here instead of directly in the next auth route because we need to use it in other places, and this is one of those places. So we're going to import that file, auth options, and the documentation honestly isn't too clear about this. It took me a while to really figure this out. I had to go through a bunch of GitHub issues and stuff. So hopefully I can simplify this for you. So we're going to get that from utils auth options. Then let's go down to the post, and we'll put this right under, let's see. Actually, you know what? We need to connect the database too. We brought in ConnectDB, but we didn't use it. So let's go right in the try here and say ConnectDB, or await ConnectDB. So that'll connect to the database. Then we're gonna get the session. So let's say const session equals await get server session, and then that takes in auth options with the provider and all that stuff. Then we want to check to see if there's no session. So if that's null, then we're going to return a new response, and we're going to say unauthorized. And then for the status, that's going to be a 401. Okay, then to get the user ID, what we can do is just say const user ID, and we can get that from session.user.id. Okay, because there's a user object in the session that has an ID. Now, down in the property data here, let's go right under seller info, and I'm going to put in owner, and we're going to set that to the user ID. And that should get us the user. So let's try it out. So I'm going to go to my terminal here, and let's try to submit a property. I'll just leave the test data in and then choose an image because that's required. Add property. Let's go over here, check it out. And look at that, owner, and that should be my user ID. So if I go to my database, and let's just reload this data and go to users. So I'm logged in, I believe, as, which user am I logged in as? Traversy Media. Yeah, I'm logged in as Traversy Media. So if we look at the ID, it's that 65C76. And if we look down here, 65C76. Okay, so now that owner will be attached to that property. Now, like I said, I want to put this in a separate file just because we're going to use it pretty often, and I don't want to have to do all these lines of code and bring, both of these in. So what we'll do is in utils, let's create a file, and we're going to call this get session user.js, and then we're going to move these two imports. We can cut those from here, paste them in here, and then we're going to have a function export const get session user, Make that async. Okay, and then in here, basically I'm going to grab, let's see, let's just grab these. Yeah, well, we don't want to send back the response here. So for now, let's just take this and put that there. So that will get the session. Now, if there's no session, let's say if no session or no session user, then we're going to return null. Okay, because we're not returning the response from here, we're just returning either null or the user. So underneath that, what I want to return, if there is a user, I actually want to return the whole user and the user ID, because there'll be certain situations where we need both, one or both or either one. So let's say user, that'll be under session.user, that'll be the whole object, and then also user ID, that'll be session.user.id. So we're going to return those two things. Actually, I wanted to put this in a try catch. So let's say try catch and just move these lines into the try. And then in the catch, we're going to do, we'll do a console.error with the error, and then we'll return null if there is an error, if something goes wrong. All right, so let's save that. So that's being exported. So now let's go back to the route, and up at the top here, we're going to import, what was it, get session user from the utils file. Then whenever we want to get a user, we don't need to do all this. We simply need to get the user ID from that from that get session user. Now we could just destructure it, like, because remember it's returning both user and user ID. So I could do this. So await get session user, and that will work. But what if there isn't a session? We want to be able to handle that. So what I'm going to do instead is not just get that directly from here, but set this to session user. And then what we'll do is check here. So if not session user, or if not session user dot and then user ID, then we want to return a 401. So let's say return new response, and we'll say user ID is required, and then send back status of 401. All right, then after that is where we can then destructure the user ID from session user. Okay, which is this, because we do want to handle if there's no session or if there's no user. So let's save that, and then let's try it out. It should work just like it did, where it puts the user in the owner field. So I'll just go ahead and select an image, add property. Let's go back here, go all the way down, and we should have, yep, there's the owner. So now in any route where you need to get the user, the logged in user, on the server in an API route, you simply bring in get session user and add these lines. I mean, like I said, you could just destructure it right from the function, but you do want to handle if there isn't a session, if it's null. Okay, and in here we're checking to see if there's a session. If there's not, then we're returning null. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, at the moment, we're just console logging. We do want to save this in the database, And of course we need the images, but we need to handle the upload first, which we'll do in the next video, where we're going to upload to Cloudinary, get a response back, and put the URL in, or the URLs, depending on how many images, in the images array. So why don't we do this? Why don't we save to the database without the images now, and then later in the next video we'll handle the image upload. So the way that this images is right now, so where is it? This is not going to work with Mongoose validation, because images is supposed to be an array of strings, and this is not going to give us, it's going to give us all that file data. So what we can do is temporarily, comment that out or delete it, and then we'll save to the database, which is going to be really simple. We already ran ConnectDB up top. Make sure you did that. And then let's say const new property, and set that to a new property. We've already brought in the model, and then pass in the property data object that we just created. Then we want to await on new property, and then call the save method. That will save to the database. And then instead of returning a 200, I want to redirect from the server to the actual property page that we're creating. So let's just comment this out, because I may change this up later. So I'm just going to comment that return out now, and then we'll say return response, and we can use redirect. And from here, let's do backticks, because we need the domain. So we can say process.env. and let's use next auth URL, which in our case is localhost 3000. And then outside of the curly brace, we'll do slash properties slash, and then we have access to the ID on new property, except it's going to be underscore ID, because Mongo saves the object ID as underscore ID. So let's save that, and then let's go back to the form, and I'm just going to put some stuff in here. We'll say this is a test street, say 10 Main Street. We're not going to keep this listing, so it doesn't really matter. Just select some of these. I just want to make sure everything goes in okay, except for the images, that won't. But we do need to choose an image in order for the form to submit. So let's submit. Okay, so it should have been saving to the database. Now it redirects us to properties slash and then the ID. Now the image here isn't going to show, because remember, we haven't done that yet, but you can see here apartment, so that's the type, the name, the address, the rates. So I only had monthly, so only monthly is showing. Description, so the beds, bath, square feet, description text, all the amenities that I checked. So all that stuff is going in here. And we can check the database through Compass as well. If I go to view and then reload data, now you can see that there's 11 listings. If I go down to the bottom, there's our test property, and it has the owner, which is, the user that I submitted with. Amenities array, rates. The only thing that's missing really is the images. All right, so yeah. In the next video, we'll go ahead and handle the Cloudinary upload.